Welcome, friends, to another edition of Economic Update, a weekly program devoted to the economic dimensions of our lives: jobs, debts, incomes, the growth of some parts of the world economy, the shrinkage of other parts, and how it impacts all of us. I'm your host, Richard Wolff. I've been a professor of economics all my adult life, and in a way, I hope that has prepared me to provide these comments on what's going on in the economy today. I want to begin by presenting to you some of the findings of the World Wealth Report. This very important periodic document took time out this year to take a look at the last 40 years, the period since 1980, of looking at what has happened in the world economy and what it tells us. So important are these results that the Harvard Business Review for the month of March 2018 devotes a long, detailed article to this wealth report, and what I'm presenting to you is a mixture of what the report contains and what the Harvard Business Review also has to say about it. Let's start at the top and then look at it with some detail. Inequality in the world has sharply worsened over the last 40 years. Let me explain. There has actually been a shrinkage of inequality, less inequality, when you compare countries to countries. Mostly that has to do with the extraordinary improvement in the economic performance of China and then also India and Brazil. They have gotten relatively richer fast, and the rest of the world, particularly the older wealthy parts, Western Europe, North America, and Japan, have grown much, much more slowly, if at all. And so there's been a little less inequality country to country. But the price of that has been a staggering increase in inequality inside countries, literally all countries. Growing inequality in China, in India, as I will come back to, as well as in the United States, Western Europe, and Japan, and so on. That's what I want to talk to you about. Over the last 40 years, the share of income of the top 1% of people in the world, the richest 1%, in 1980, they together got 16% of the world's income. They were only 1% of the world's people. They got 16% of the world's income. By 2016, that share of the top 1% had risen from 16, which is what it was in 1980, to 20%. Wow. That means the rich got much richer. The rich got a bigger share. Not only did their income go up, but it went up faster than everybody else, so that everybody else had to make do with a smaller share. Let me look at this in some detail so you can see the most remarkable of it. From 1980 to the present, the income of the top richest 0.001%, that's really the richest of the rich in America, went up by 600%. You heard me right. From 1980 to 2016, the income of the richest 0.001% went up 600%. The bottom half of the American people, that's 160-odd million people, the bottom half saw no income increase at all over the last 40 years. That is, if you adjust the money they earned for the prices they had to pay, they went nowhere. I want to let that sink in. The richest people got an increase over 40 years of 600%, and the bottom half of the population saw no increase at all. In Europe, just to give you another kind of comparison, that top 0.001%, that income grew, but it grew 5 times more slowly than in the United States. The Europeans didn't experience the level of growth of the top at the expense of everybody else the way they did in the United States. So that the bottom half in Europe over 40 years grew by 26%. Over 40 years, that's not much, but it is better than zero, which is what their American equivalent, the lower half in America, was able to do. Compare China and India. China grew much faster than India, but unlike India, it didn't have a growing inequality like the Indians did. Yes, inequality in China grew, but it grew much more slowly than the inequality of India. And that tells you as much about what is happening to divide Asia as any other statistic I can think of. In the United States, then, the bottom 50% income share decreased from 20% of total income to 10%. Let me drive that home. The bottom half of the American people lost half of the share of total income produced in America compared to 1980. It has been a disaster for the bottom half, which is the biggest clue I can give all of you about how to understand American politics right up through Mr. Trump. But where the Harvard Business Review article falls down is to explain why did this happen? What causes this staggering growth? But even before I do that, I want to use these data to make a powerful point. We have been told for the last century that capitalism is going to enrich the rich, yes indeed, but we're all going to benefit because it's all going to trickle down. The rich being better off will make us all participate in their good fortune. These statistics show for the last 40 years that is cold stone wrong. That doesn't happen. It doesn't trickle down. Here in the United States, even more dramatically than anywhere else in the world, the rich got much, much, much richer, and the poor went absolutely nowhere. Nothing trickled, my friends. If you want to help the people, the majority, the bottom 2/3 of this country, you're going to have to help them. You're going to have to deal with them. The notion that you can make the rich richer and feel good that it'll all trickle down is revealed by the last 40 years to be the phony-only story it always was. As to some of the reasons, in 1980, the United States had the highest minimum wage in the world. But since then, the minimum wage, again adjusted for prices, how much the minimum wage actually pays you versus the prices you have to pay, the minimum wage has fallen by 30%. Let me compare that to France, where the minimum wage has gone from 1980 to the present up by 300%. It's tripled. Let me drive it home again. In the United States, the real minimum wage fell by 30%. In France, it rose by 300%. We're not talking small differences here. There's a reason why the bottom half in Europe didn't fare as badly as the United States, because they're treated better. They have a national health service and a national health insurance program that helps them. Higher education is becoming more and more costly in America, requiring families to take out debt. In more and more European countries, higher education is becoming free, no charge at all. Let me give you a little example that struck me. When Bavarian policymakers, Bavaria is the southern part of Germany, tried to introduce small university fees in recent years, a referendum was called in which the Bavarian people fundamentally and overwhelmingly rejected the imposition of fees. The two parts of the world, Europe and North America, are different, and nowhere does it show in the less serious inequality growth in Europe than in the United States. But fundamentally, capitalism has shown itself in the last 40 years to be an engine of unequal economic development. It is not the alternative. The only reason capitalism temporarily, after the 1930s, made less inequality was the massive uprising of people across the world demanding a better treatment than what capitalism was giving them. And they got it for a while. The New Deal in America, social democracy in Europe. But as soon as capitalism could recover and resume its normal momentum, its normal way of development, inequality was the gift it gives. No trickle down. Inequality is the cost of the capitalist system for the majority. I want to move next to an institution that isn't part of the normal capitalist arrangement here in the United States. I want to talk to you briefly about the YMCA. This is a charitable institution, been around in the United States for a long time, usually providing all kinds of services to working people, poor people, athletic facilities, social benefit programs of various kinds. But I want to talk to you about the problem of the YMCA because it illustrates a larger point. The YMCA in particular I'm going to talk to you about is the YMCA in Chicago, one of America's biggest cities. The head, the CEO, they call him, which is already a hint. The head of the YMCA, a social service organization, is given the same title as the head of a capitalist corporation, Chief Economic Officer, CEO. The CEO of the Chicago YMCA is Dick Malone. In 2016, his total income, salary and bonus, came to $580,000 for the year. That's over $500,000. The workers at the Chicago YMCA, the people who clean the YMCA buildings, who make sure that the water in the YMCA swimming pool is safe for children to go into, etc., earn in the range of, get ready now, $11 an hour to $15.50 an hour. Let's do that again. The workers get 11 to 15 bucks an hour. The CEO gets $500,000 a year. This grotesquerie led to finally, after years, to the workers, those earning 11 to 15, to call a strike on March 1st of 2018. A one-day strike to protest this grotesque inequality. They were organized by the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, and that negotiations between the two sides are continuing. Why did I bring this particular little strike to your attention? Because the inequality of capitalism spreads beyond the corporation. It is replicated, sadly, in institutions that are not profit-making, corporate-driven institutions. The YMCA is a social service organization. No one expects it to run a profit. No one demands that it compete against other social service organizations to earn a profit. Yet the infection, if you like, the disease of capitalism spreads and makes a YMCA replicate what goes on in corporations. Wild overpayment of the people at the top, gross underpayment of those who do all the work until it's unbearable. They contribute to the inequality because they allow the model of capitalism to be reproduced in their own ranks. The next economic update I want to bring to you was stunning, and I'm sure caught many of your attentions as well. This has to do with an event in Quebec, Canada. 700 physicians, residents, and medical students rejected a pay raise that had been negotiated by the federations that represent them. My goodness, an organization of these doctors called Médecins Québécois pour le Régime, in French because it's Quebec, of course, said, quote, "We, Quebec doctors, who believe in a strong public health system, oppose the recent salary increases negotiated by our medical federations. My goodness. In February, Quebec's legislature gave another increase to the to the province's 10,000 medical specialists. The average salary for a specialist in Quebec is already high. Ready? $400,000 annually. And so these doctors, these 700 out of those 10,000, said, wait a minute, there's something wrong. We are already very well paid, and this system is giving us an increase while there aren't enough supplies, there aren't enough nurses, there aren't enough other workers in the health system to provide a decent health system. We don't want our increases. We'd rather see the money go to make a better health system. Now, I want to explain to all of you what this means. This is very important. It's not just about the generosity of these specialists. It's not just about the wonderful model of workers who care more about the service they're part of than grabbing a little more money for themselves. Granted, they're already very well paid. But I want to talk to you about, again, the capitalist model. You pay the people at the top a great deal, and part of that money is to keep down everybody else. Because you know something? It's been learned by capitalists that if you pay the top a lot, you can avoid having to pay the mass of your workers what they really ought to be paid. It's cheaper to pay those at the top a lot more than it is to give everybody a fair shake. And so you're top-heavy with overpaid folks at the top. And you know something? This happens everywhere outside of the corporation and in it. Corporate executives at the top are paid enormously, and part of their job is to manipulate and control everybody else, because the people who run the system understand in the end it's cheaper to pay the top a lot more if it avoids having to pay the mass of people a decent salary. You see it in the university with top-heavy folks at the top, at the administrators. You see it at the Ymca. You see it in the medical profession. You see it everywhere. Messing up the average worker by overpaying those at the top and telling them, we'll pay you extra, you keep the lid on all of those fellow workers. Well, 700 courageous doctors and medical professionals in Quebec understand this game and said no. As if to illustrate it, here's the next update. The Ymca, which is a organization of lecturers and other staffs in universities across the United Kingdom, started a 2-week strike period on March 1st. Why? Because, again, the conditions of their teaching and the quality of the education they can bring to the people of Britain is being attacked, and they won't have it. Another example, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a state here in the United States which has the following statistic it has to be ashamed of. It has the lowest paid public school teachers in the 50 states of the United States. They were so moved by the strike of public school teachers in West Virginia that they are now planning to do it themselves. They're going to have a strike. And their union, unlike the one in West Virginia, the affiliate of the National Education Association, is saying they will be part of this. They saw the writing on the wall in West Virginia. Once again, teachers are saying, you cannot treat us as if we don't matter, because it's an insult not only to us as professional teachers, but to the people of this state into whose care you have entrusted their children. What kind of a commitment to the future, to children, is shown by paying your teachers less than any other state in the Union? At this point, I want to make a usual break and remind you that we maintain 2 websites that we urge you to make use of. The first is rdwolff with 2fs.com, and the second one is democracyatwork.info. Both of them allow you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Both of them allow you to communicate what you like about this program, how you would like us to change the program, and so on. And both of them provide you with extra material. They are available to you 24/7, no charge whatsoever, ever. For those of you that are listening and would like to see this program instead as a video, as a television program, we urge you, please, go to patreon.com on the internet, Patreon, patreon.com/economic update. And that will allow you to view this program as a television program. I also want to remind you, as we did last week, to take a look at these two programs that we provide, podcasts that you can find as well on our website. The first is Left Out, a monthly podcast that does all kinds of interesting interviews I think you will find extraordinarily interesting. And also another one called Puerto Rico Forward that offers really extraordinary insights into the history and struggles of the Puerto Rican people at this time. I encourage you to give them a listen. We're very proud of adding them to what we do on our websites, and you can also find Left Out and Puerto Rico Forward on iTunes, Google Play, as well as our website. I think you will find them as valuable and useful as I do. My next update goes to Africa with the American Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. He gave a lecture recently in Africa warning African countries to be wary of making commercial deals, loans, building projects with China, because, he said, the Chinese may take advantage of you if you make those financial deals. It blew my socks off. Here is the American Secretary of State telling Africans who, starting with the slave trade, have understood that dealings with the West, Europe, America, in any economic way, is a long-term project of destroying Africa in many ways, giving advice that they should be wary of somebody else who might do that to them. There's something horrifically absurd in the very spectacle, and his inability to recognize the absurdity of what he was doing tells you a lot about the Trump administration, if you didn't figure it out already. And just as Mr. Tillerson was giving that little story, what was going on right nearby in the Democratic Republic of the Congo? Guess what? Apple computers and other companies were negotiating with the government a new set of deals. What were the deals about? Cobalt. Turns out that the Democratic Republic of Congo is a place where cobalt is importantly located and can be mined. And if you want to do anything with modern batteries, you need cobalt. So the companies are cutting the deals with Congo, exactly endangering the future of Congo the way Mr. Tillerson was advising African countries not to do. That's because what Apple does is what these companies have always done, and what Mr. Tillerson does is the BS veneer as if he didn't know and understand, as the former head of Exxon, heaven help us, exactly what the realities here are. The final economic update we have time for allows me to introduce you all to the JCCU. What does that mean? That's Japan's Cooperative Consumer Union, or to be more accurate, Japan's Consumer Cooperative Union. It is one of the largest co-op associations in the world. It's been going in Japan since 1951. It now includes 334 co-ops that are members of that building. It is servicing, get ready for this, it's a powerhouse. 37% of Japanese households are members of the JCCU. They are a big, powerful co-op organization. They prove that in that capitalist economy, co-ops can become a very important part of the economy. They have a specialty in grocery stores, in delivering grocery and other items across Japan. They are much bigger in delivery than Amazon has been able to be. They are bigger than Amazon and do not fear the competition with Amazon. 90% of their members are females who do the ordering for households in Japan. Here's the interesting thing. With millions and millions of members, with a very powerful role in the economy of Japan, they really are ready to take the next step. Because a consumer co-op, and this is so important to understand, is a way for people to cooperate in the act of consumption, in buying things that they need, food, clothing, shelter, and so on. But it is not yet about being cooperative in the production side, in cooperatively producing as well as cooperatively consuming. What could be done by consumer co-ops is to say, what we consume collectively and cooperatively, we also want to see produced in that way. We want to see a production side of the economy, the enterprises where goods and services are produced, factories, offices, stores. We want them to work cooperatively in the same spirit that we have consumed cooperatively. The millions and millions of Japanese that are fiercely loyal members of their consumer cooperatives want to get the same benefits of lower prices and better conditions for consumption. They want to see that also done for the workplace. Better conditions, better solidarity, a better life. What they're not willing to say yet, but I'll say it for them, they want to go beyond the capitalist workplace, the top-down, hierarchical, inequality-producing economic system that we suffer under, and they want to move to something else. They've already figured it out by cooperatively buying. Now they want to take the next step, which they are uniquely powerfully positioned to do in Japan because they've done such a fine job of the consumer cooperation. Now we can move on to cooperativizing the workplace, or as we like to say here, democratize the workplace. Make it be a place that serves people, not requiring people to serve it. Listen up, CEOs, from corporations on over to the YMCA. Time for change. We've come to the end of the first half of this economic update. Thank you very much for being with me. We're going to take a short break and then we'll be back with an interview I think you'll find remarkably exciting and important.